In 2002, God started preparing me for what was going to be my second service-based business. But I noticed that as I was working on it and also still running my seven-figure service-based business, my first one, I was noticing some internal resistance. And as I got closer and closer to closing down that seven-figure business, this internal resistance got even louder. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my struggle transitioning to my second service-based business after running my first seven-figure service-based business. And what I'm realizing is that this struggle is not personal. It's not just me. So many Christians working a 9-to-5 who have been called to start a business also deal with this internal struggle. They are respected, they are established, they are influential in their careers. So starting their own business feels so uncomfortable. We're going to dig into that struggle. And at the end of this episode, you will have the tools you need to be able to rise above that struggle and step into that calling that God has upon your life to start a business. If you're ready, tune out the road noise, lean in, and let's get started. You're currently working a 9-to-5, but you know you're called to do more. You feel unfulfilled at a 9-to-5 job you've clearly outgrown. You ignore the quiet nudge and your internal GPS prompting you to move in a new direction because you're afraid of losing the stability of a paycheck and stepping into something uncertain. If that resonates with you, you're in the right place. Welcome to Start That Business Podcast, a faith-based business podcast for Christians working a 9-to-5 who feel called to more. Here you will find the clarity, strategy, systems, and faith-led guidance you need to step boldly into your God-given calling to start a service-based business. My name is Chichi Okomadu. I'm a business strategist, an implementation coach, and a Jesus follower. I knew I was called to start a business, but I struggled with lack of clarity, self-doubt, and the fear of losing a stable income. My lack of courage kept me stuck in my 9-to-5 until I traded it for faith and obedience to God's calling. I left my job, built a 7-figure service-based business, and ran it for 13 years. Now I help other Christians working a 9-to-5 do the same. Your next assignment starts here with someone who has lived the journey, navigated the transitions, endured the pressure, reading the ups and downs, and stayed anchored in faith through it all. You don't have to stay stuck in unfulfillment, fear, doubt, or lack of clarity because God has already equipped you to launch the business He placed in your heart. It's time to partner with God and step boldly into your calling to start that business. You know the one I'm talking about? Yes, that one you've been putting off for a long time. If you've built a successful career, you will probably struggle with the idea of starting your own service-based business. It will feel so uncomfortable. And here's the reason why. You haven't left your job yet. You're still respected. You're still performing. You're still delivering results. But internally, you know that something has shifted. That's the nudge of the Holy Spirit prompting you and telling you that there's more. There's more to this 9-to-5. You feel called to build something on your own, but that's where the tension starts. The tension, it's like two things are fighting inside of you because on one hand, you are competent on your job. You've proven yourself. You've climbed the corporate ladder. You've led teams. You have made money for your company in the millions of dollars just by the work you produce every day. Maybe you're even in a C-suite position. You are highly placed in your company. Maybe you even have a PhD. You're a doctor in the medical field or a doctor academically. You have built this much success in your career. But on the other hand, to start a business, you have to become like a beginner again. It feels like you're going back to elementary school to go learn the basics again because you're going from one world to a different world. And a lot of people don't admit that that can be really hard. It's actually harder than people admit. And I felt this same tension transitioning from doing something successful to starting something new again. And that struggle, that tension, after running my first service-based business, I thought that starting a new one will feel easy. I'm like, okay, I'm not a rookie in this entrepreneurship world. I've been in it for 13 years now and more and counting. And I felt it would be easy, but it didn't feel easy. As a matter of fact, it was quite humbling for me because in my first business, I had mastery. In my first business, I had recognition. In my first business, I had reached like the apex. I won't say the apex, but I had reached like a major milestone that a lot of business owners desire to reach, which is building your business to 7 figures and doing so many things. My company had raised funds from investors. We had serviced over 80,000 customers and counting. We made tremendous progress. But in this new one that I was transitioning to, I had to relearn a lot of things. I had to rebuild my visibility. I was already visible in the first one. The business had gained so much visibility. But with this new one, it felt like starting back at elementary, rebuilding things from scratch. And I had to confront this uncomfortable feeling. I had to wrestle with this struggle because I realized that sometimes success in one season can make humility in the next season very hard. It can make obedience in the next season very hard. And as I sat with this discomfort, as I sat with this struggle in prayer, I was led to the story of Naaman in 2 Kings 5. You can read it at your own convenience. Now, Naaman was a commander. Naaman had fought and won so many battles. He was victorious. He was a decorated military, high-ranking official in his country. He was influential. The Bible says that he was a great man in the sight of his master. He had won many battles for his master. But guess what? Naaman had leprosy, and he couldn't win that battle of leprosy. He had won so many other battles, so it felt like in one area of his life he had so much success, and in another area he felt like he was struggling. He felt like he was losing ground. And as I read his story in 2 Kings 5, I saw myself in it. I saw the struggle, the tension between success and stepping into something new where you have to build from scratch again, where you have to start from scratch again. And as I meditated on his story, I realized that when you are going through that struggle of past or current success and stepping into something new where you have to rebuild from scratch, you are experiencing what I call the Naaman syndrome. Yeah. And that is why it is so hard to transition from career success to starting a service-based business. That is why that struggle is there, because it's a tension between two things. You're battling previous success with this new thing God is calling you to build. The Naaman syndrome is the pride and internal resistance that shows up when you are accomplished in one area but feel insufficient in another area. Because when you're starting a new business, because you're starting to learn things from scratch, it exposes your insufficiency. So you feel insufficient, and the pride from the previous success rises up, and the two things are fighting. And that is what the Naaman syndrome is all about. You are highly accomplished, but in the area God is calling you to grow next, you feel unknown, you feel exposed, or even overqualified for the starting line because you have some experience, but It's not adding up. You feel like the oldest person in an elementary class. And your pride quietly resists starting again. The pride from the previous success or the pride from your career success or where you have been successful is quietly resisting this beginner level that God is putting you into. You are a decorated Christian professional. You've won so many battles in the corporate world. You are highly respected, but still you are in need of clarity on how to start this business God is calling you to start. As I read 2 Kings 5, I saw in Naaman's story what I call the Naaman Blueprint. With this blueprint, you will see the steps you can take to overcome that struggle, to overcome that internal resistance so that you can step into what God is calling you to do. Because the hardest part of transition isn't leaving your job. Leaving your job is not the hardest part. The hardest part is humbling yourself before you do. Humbling yourself and embracing this new beginner level, this new place where you have to learn again from the beginning. And if you're in that in-between season where you're still employed, you're still successful, but you feel called to more, how you handle this transition will determine whether you launch or you delay what God is calling you to do. So we're going to go into the Naaman Blueprint, and I will walk you through the 3 steps in the blueprint. And I got this right from 2 Kings 5. The first step in the Naaman Blueprint is to listen to direction and be willing to start again, be willing to begin again. Now, Naaman's breakthrough started with a servant girl. If you read the story, the servant girl that was captured during one of his raids or battles, and she was serving in his household, she came to him and she said, I know a prophet in my country who can help you solve the problem you're having. And Naaman could have easily disregarded her because she was not a general, she was not a prophet, she was just a maid. But she pointed him toward a solution. And the first thing he did was to listen to that direction that this maid was giving him, and he was willing to leave his country and travel to her country to go see this prophet. So that is the first step in the blueprint. He had to humble himself to listen. He had to bring himself down from this high position where he was already a decorated military official to listening to this maid who was working with him. When I was starting my second service-based business, I had to humble myself. I had to be willing to start again after building my first 7-figure service-based business. I had to listen not from a place or position of dominance, but from a position of learning. Sometimes the breakthrough you're looking for comes from voices that doesn't match your resume. Your career success has trained you to give direction. Maybe you're a manager, maybe you're in a director level position, or you're even in a C-suite, and your career success has trained you to give direction. You're leading teams, you're telling people what to do. But now you're starting a business that requires you to receive direction, receive instruction from someone else. That shift can be uncomfortable. When you start your service-based business, you might need to learn marketing from someone who is younger than you. You might need to follow frameworks from someone with less corporate experience than you have. You might need to ask beginner-level questions, and it might feel uncomfortable, but Naaman humbled himself and listened to the maid because she gave him a solution to the problem he was having. And when you humble yourself to listen, it doesn't diminish your past success. Instead, it positions you for the future that God is calling you to. Naaman had to listen before he dipped into the river. He had to listen before he got to the solution that was going to help him. So you have to listen in this season of transition so that you can get the instructions you need to build success in the entrepreneurial world. Because the hardest part of your transition, like I said, isn't leaving your job. It is humbling yourself before you do, even if it means starting small. Now, the second step in the blueprint is don't expect exemption from process because of past success. Ooh, this one was really hard for me. I struggled with this one. You see, when I was reading the story of Naaman, when he got to Israel and he got to see the prophet, he was expecting that the prophet will come out and greet him and give him this preferential treatment and relate to him on the level of his past success. But guess what the prophet did? The prophet didn't even come out to have a conversation with him. The prophet sent his servant to go give Naaman an instruction. And the servant came out and said, my boss told me to tell you to go and dip yourself in the river and you will be made whole. Now, Naaman became very furious. He became very angry. He's like, what do you mean? Does your boss even know who I am? Does he know the past success I've experienced? Does he know that I'm a highly decorated military official? He couldn't even come out to greet me. And he just sent you, a mere servant. So Naaman was expecting some kind of exemption from the process. He was expecting some kind of preferential treatment. Past success doesn't exempt you from the process. And you shouldn't expect special treatment because of your past success, because you're a VP in your current company, because you are the CFO at your current company, because you are the COO at your current company, because you are the HR manager. Don't expect special treatment as you transition to start this business. Naaman was expecting the prophet to come out personally to see him, to wave his hand, to perform something dramatic. Instead, the prophet sent his servant and told him, go and wash yourself in the river. It was a simple instruction. There was no ceremony. There was no recognition of his rank, just process. And that's what you get. As you transition, you're going to be working with coaches. You're going to be working with service providers. You're going to be working with people who might not recognize your past career success, might not recognize where you're coming from. And that's hard, especially when you have accomplished so much in your corporate world. When you start a business, nobody cares what you did in your 9 to 5. Nobody celebrates your resume. Nobody rolls out the red carpets. Nobody is impressed by your previous influence or the amount of people you were leading on your team. Nobody adjusts the system because of your past success. And that can bruise your ego. That can bruise you. That's where the pride and the internal resistance are fighting. Because in the business space, you're a beginner. So you have to build your offer. You have to refine your messaging. You have to talk to potential clients. You have to learn through iteration. And it may feel beneath your experience level, especially coming from a successful career position. But here's the truth. God often resets you to rebuild you because what worked in your old season will not work in this new season. What worked in the corporate environment will not work in this entrepreneurial space. So submit to the process. Whether it's a simple instruction, whether it's something hard you have to do, submit to the process. Don't walk away from your business because beginning feels basic. Don't walk away from your business because starting and learning something new feels hard. Naaman almost walked away because the process felt too simple. Don't walk away because the process might feel hard or overwhelming for you. And this is exactly why so many successful professionals delay starting their business. Not because they lack the skill or the intelligence, but because they resist the feeling of being a beginner again. You are a Christian professional who has built a successful career. and you feel called to start a business, but starting from scratch feels intimidating. Starting from scratch feels beneath your experience level. This is why I created the Start That Business Live workshop. Because when you have a clear path, humility becomes easier. In this live workshop, I will show you how to start your first service-based business with a limited time, zero guesswork, and without quitting your job, and also honoring and respecting the success you have built in your corporate career. It is happening on the 21st of March at 12 noon Central Standard Time. I'm giving you a simple strategic roadmap so you're not wandering through the beginner phase or reinventing the wheel. Go to fromjobtobusiness.com to save your seat. And if you can't attend live because you have something else on that day, the replay will be available for a limited time, but you have to register to receive it. Here's the step 3 in the Naaman Blueprint. The third step in the Naaman Blueprint is to acknowledge the discomfort and choose humility anyway. The river the prophet told him to go deep in, according to the Bible, was one of the dirtiest rivers in that nation. So Naaman felt offended. He said, "Are there not better rivers in Damascus? Why does he have to tell me to go deep in this river that is so dirty?" And the tension between his pride and the internal resistance of humbling himself to go do something that felt beneath his experience, that tension was so increased. And you might be feeling the same struggle. I felt the same struggle. There were programs that I signed up for, and when I showed up to them, I felt like the instructions they were giving me was beneath my experience level after running a 7-figure service-based business. Sometimes my ego was bruised. Sometimes I felt offended because I'm like, why are you telling me to go do that? Sometimes starting a business feels like you're going back to elementary school when you already have a PhD in your career. You might be the oldest person in the room. You might be the most educated. You might be the most experienced, but you are relearning the ABCs of entrepreneurship. And when you're starting again in this new business world, humility might feel like weakness, but it's not a weakness. It's actually a strategy. That is how you overcome the struggle, and that is how you rebuild success in this new area. And here's what I'm learning. You can be experienced and still need to relearn the foundation in a different space or in a different context. You can be accomplished and still need humility in a different area. Humility looks like accepting that you are relearning. Humility looks like acknowledging the discomfort and the internal struggle. Humility looks like being the oldest in the room and still taking notes. Humility looks like being accomplished in your corporate career and still asking beginner level questions about entrepreneurship. Humility looks like relearning the ABCs without resentment, without getting offended, without letting your ego to be bruised. You might feel overqualified for the level life has brought you back to, which is starting again in this new business world. But acknowledge that feeling, but don't let it control you. Naaman didn't lose his greatness when he dipped himself in that dirty river. And you are not going to lose your greatness by starting this business God is calling you to start. It's not going to erase the past success. Instead, those past success become things that you can leverage in this new world. Those past success strengthens your foundation. Your career success proves your competence. It proves that you have what it takes to build a successful business. Business humility will produce the transformation that you are looking for in this new space God is calling you to. Naaman dipped 7 times, not once, not halfway, 7 times. He was consistent, he was obedient, he humbled himself, and that's how the miracle came for him. If you're transitioning from career success into starting your first service-based business, the tension is real. I felt the tension. I still feel it as I continue to build this second service-based business. You will feel the discomfort of being unknown in this new space. You will feel the discomfort of being overqualified at the level you're on. You will feel the discomfort and the resistance of starting again. But you are not behind. You are not being demoted. God is not demoting you. You are being reshaped and rebuilt for this new thing that God is calling you into. So let's recap the Naaman Blueprint real quick. The first step in the Naaman Blueprint is to listen to direction and be willing to begin again. The second step is don't expect exemption from process because of past success. The third step is acknowledge the discomfort and choose humility anyway. If you follow this pattern, if you follow this blueprint, you won't just launch your business. You will be developed, you will be reshaped, and you'll be rebuilt into the new version of the person who can attain the same level of success you attained in your career, also in business. Naaman didn't lose his greatness. He regained his health. Starting again, like I said, doesn't erase your past success. It prepares you for your next assignment. So if you are ready to stop resisting the beginner phase and finally launch your service-based business with clarity, come join me on March 21st at 12 noon Central Standard Time for the Start That Business Live workshop. Go to fromjobtobusiness.com and register. The replay will be available for a limited time, but only if you sign up, you'll be able to get it. Don't let pride delay your next level. Humble yourself deep and start again and build that business that God is calling you to build, because underneath you are the everlasting arms. You cannot fail. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I pray it made you feel seen, taught you something new, and encouraged you to take action. If it did, please hit the follow button so you're notified when a new episode drops. If today's episode resonated with you and you're ready to start your business while working your 9-to-5, head to fromjobtobusiness.com to book your discovery call. Lastly, it will be a huge blessing if you left a review for this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's the number one way I know this podcast is serving you. Until next time, remember, your expertise is needed, your calling is real, and I'm here to help you make it a reality.